Hey everyone, welcome to In the Business of Healthy Masculinity. We are into our next episode and I am freaking excited to introduce you to one of my favourite humans. Helen and I have been on quite a journey ourselves over the last decade or so. And I think, Helen, welcome to the show. And I think like you and I probably go back the furthest out of anyone I know on this wild emerging journey called life of the last decade. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Garry.
I'm proper almost like full circle moments. Like you were the brave person when we were back in self-awareness space many years ago, right? That came on my Value Through Vulnerability podcast, episode number 1. So just wow, what we've seen, what we felt, how we've changed. So please introduce yourself, Helen.
Thank you, Garry. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's great to be back. And I think, we figured out this was our third podcast through your podcast iterations over the years. Our third time coming together, which is beautiful for me as well. My favourite, number 3. So my name is Helen Amery. My business is Wild Fig Solutions, and it's been around since 2014, which is round about when we met, I think, Garry. So maybe 2015, something like that. And it's gone through various iterations, but the common thread through all my work has been to help people uncover their brilliance, help people uncover their uniqueness, their natural authenticity. And I've done that in so many different ways. But right now, the way I'm using right now is one of those moments where it's like, oh, everything that's gone before makes sense to have brought me to right here. And this is the best, fastest, most efficient, most effective way I've ever found of uncovering all that brilliant uniqueness of a person. So yes, loving my work.
I love that. Well, beautiful introduction. You're just so vibrant as you share it as well, Helen, which is wonderful. And I just want to say for anyone that does watch this or listen back on the podcast, I've gone through the Mace experience with Helen, and it is as profound as Helen shares. So, is this a marketing podcast for Helen Amery and Wild Fig Solutions? I hope so, because in the spirit of In the Business of Healthy Masculinity, that's part of like this conversation today, right? Which is how do we, in particularly men, but everybody, uncover that uniqueness again? How do we allow it to flow through us again in a way that maybe over stories, iterations, generations even, right? There's been stuff handed down to us that we don't realize. In my example, as you know, Helen, being bullied as a kid, carrying on to that trauma of not believing I could speak about it, not as a man, not able to say that I'm struggling, asking for help, etc., etc. So I just want to say thank you for your work. I've really enjoyed the experience of your work quite recently, and I just want to maybe start there in a way. I've given a bit of a seed how it's impacted me, why it's been helpful for me. Are you seeing this? We don't have to focus just on men, but I'm curious. Are you finding men finding real value in what you're offering at the moment, and why? And how may that help us as a society even move forward in your experience? A couple of tiny little questions always for Helen get going.
Right, let's get straight in. Yes, thank you, Garry, and yes, it was wonderful working with you. And for anybody who's interested, Garry beautifully shared a conversation with me on the back of his experience of his first sessions. And Garry, I guess we could put that link in the show notes, whatever, so people can see that too. Because yes, my approach does really work for men. It doesn't involve any talking about your past. You don't have to rake over old coals of stories of childhood, how your parents were with you, how any of your education was, even your boss last week, or your business partner 2 years ago. You don't need to tell any of these stories, affairs, betrayals, all this stuff. You don't need to tell all the story of it. And that's really something that draws people to it, either because they just don't want to talk about that stuff, or because they've talked about it and talked about it and talked about it, and they've seen that hasn't actually helped and solved the problem. So yes, it really works for men because broadly, not completely, of course, but broadly, men aren't in love with the whole, let's talk about all my problems. So, and I say broadly because there is never an absolute with any of this stuff. So yes, that's one of the reasons I'm seeing it really work well for men. The other reason I'm seeing it work well is because it's very practical. So I've gone through a journey through lots of weird woo-woo spiritual stuff, lots of stuff that required me to trust and go, okay, I trust this person I'm working with. So even though this thing seems very weird and wacky and I have no idea what's going on and I have actually no idea if this is going to solve my problem. I'm going to trust. And so I've had a big phase of my journey was this kind of really what I see now as dropping into the feminine energy of life, dropping into receiving and trusting and allowing and going with the flow. But what I came to see was that, and actually particularly on the back of me experiencing the Mace Energy Method, what I came to see was that I actually really love practical stuff. I've always really loved practical stuff. I've always loved solutions where I can go, I will do X and I will get Y. And most of the healing modalities, even therapy and even medications, can't always guarantee the results you're going to get. Like there's always an element of yeah, well, this will work if, or, you know, like with meds, oh yeah, you can take this, except you might get all of these downsides, which yeah, that's just the payoff you have to live with. Or yeah, as I say, some of those, the more woo-woo, which are more feminine usually, they're not wrong, they just aren't the right match for everybody. And I didn't really ever feel like they were the right match for me. So when I found this, and again, so therefore another thing that's really working for men is that it is practical. Like, you know, for yourself, Garry, you're in the driving seat of the work. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm facilitating you in a process. You are doing the work for yourself. You're following a very simple step-by-step process that I take you through the whole thing. You are doing that removal of crap from your own system without having to tell me any of the story about it. And then you feel amazing on the back of it. So yeah, I love it. And yeah, and like I say, it really works for men for those reasons, primarily those reasons.
I love you sharing that. And I think also what I want to capture as you shared that, Helen, is you've spoken beautifully to what we are collectively are trying to do with this platform, which is say, hey men, here's a space, here's some conversations that are happening, that role model that we need both. We need to model and double up and down the feminine and masculine energies together. We don't split them apart. We're not just all masculine. We're not just all feminine. And you just spoke beautifully about your own journey, right? And I love that. I love the fact that we're really role modeling here. It's about finding the thing that works for you and embracing both. It's not when you get told you have to be alpha male or you have to just listen to everybody, right? Yeah. It's not either or. It really is. It really is this blend of all. And I think that's the embodiment piece that I think particularly us men, right? Particularly us men, I'm speaking from personal experience, we're not allowed to be embodied in work because you have to hit the number. And that becomes the myopic face in business. That's the only thing that matters is making profit. And anything else that gets in the way of that is seen as weakness or ineffective or not productive. So when you hear that, Helen, I'm curious if you have men in particular, but again, anybody coming to you going, look, something's not right for me, Helen. It feels completely wrong that I'm focused just on this one thing when there's so much going on in the world. I've got a family, but yeah, I do have to keep paying the mortgage, etc. How does Mace help that person when they're so maybe stuck in their head around this disconnect within them going, I get that I've got to hit the number, but so much of my life is wrapped up if I don't hit that number.
Yeah. God, I really see that, Garry, and this like so masculine energy, and therefore primarily men, like you say, everybody's got masculine and feminine energy, but most men have primary masculine. I have primary masculine energy, in fact, as a woman, but most men have primary masculine energy, and the desire is to help. The desire is to do and to take responsibility and to make a difference. And that's a beautiful thing. But because it's gotten so lost in amongst the negativity that we unknowingly created for ourselves, that's what brings all the weight with it. That's what brings all the, like, rather than responsibility being a gift and an amazing opportunity, it feels like the weight of the world. It feels like I'm trapped. I have to keep doing that thing and hitting that number and achieving that result and growing that business, whatever the thing is that man's doing, or else, you know, what will that mean for my partner or my wife or my husband? What will that mean for my children? What will that mean for this house? That, you know, we follow the story of life and say, oh, we're meant to get more money, and in getting more money, therefore we're meant to get a bigger house and more cars and more holidays and more responsibilities. But then that all just amplifies how weighty it all feels. That increases the feeling of trappedness. And it is only the feeling of trappedness. So we can imagine that, oh, well, I feel like this because of the job, because of having to hit those numbers. I feel like this because I've got this big responsibility of a house now and blah, blah, blah. But no, it's that the feeling is in us. And so because my work is all about how you feel. That's what we're always, and it was a surprise to me how disconnected I was with my feelings when I first came to it, given all the work I had done prior to that. It's like, wow, I am so not connected to how I feel. And it took my practitioner a lot of like questioning, but Helen, how do you feel? Stop telling me how you think. Tell me how you feel. And it was like, wow, I really have lost touch with that. So in the work, because of what we remove, it removes the negative feelings. It removes the reactivity. It removes the repression, the emotional repression that we are innocently doing because feelings look too dangerous when we're little. And in the removal of all those blocks and barriers and limitations, then our feelings can flow again. Then we flow again. Then our life flows again. And just like you intimated there, Garry, then hitting a number can just be hitting a number. If that's what we enjoy doing, if that's what lights us up, if we can see it's part of our bigger purpose, if we can see that actually in doing this, we're going to achieve something else, which means we can have a knock-on effect over here. It's like the lightness comes back to life, the aliveness comes back to life, so that we can live what we're here to live without the heaviness, without the weight, without the tangle, without the, oh, but I've got to because. And I see that massively for men in particular, because the masculine is here to serve. The feminine is the spark of inspiration. It's the moment when that new idea drops in, when that new passion comes to life, when that, there's like I could do this, I could create this. Then the masculine is in service to that. It is delivering on that desire. It's delivering on that purpose. And that's an amazing use of that healthy masculine energy to turn a passion and a purpose into reality in the world. And it's all meant to feel good. It's all meant to feel light and alive and fun and enjoyable and fulfilling and satisfying. So yes, it really helps with men in that kind of context.
It's so interesting because you and I have had quite some discussions as you've come into the work. I've gone through it with you. You know, we've often on the back channels, we've always had great conversations around how I see the world. You know, if I go big system, right? You know, what's going on in the world, you know, stuff happening in the Middle East, you know, politics, etc. But remembering, and I've struggled, you know that, because the sessions I've had with you, right? I've struggled myself with the whole, like, but there is so much happening in the world, Helen. These are very real pressures. There is stuff happening that is awful. And then remembering that the best I can do as Garry, as a man, is to allow myself the biggest expansive space in my mind, heart, soul experience of life, because through that, I've got the best possible chance to influence people positively within the places I can influence. And that's where I got to as part of the work with you, right? It was instead of for God's sake, why is there another bloody genocide? Why have we not learned through history? Why all these people are doing this, all the people are doing that? And there's very real frustration, anger, and rightly so in my experience of life. But that doesn't change anything. And that's the really hard thing, I think, particularly for us men, is you've got the end game, you can see the thing that's wrong. We need to fix that. Again, be the fixer. But knowing we've got no chance of fixing something as big as that on a sort of systemic basis on our own. And I think that's why your work's so important for me, because the more people that get the experience of doing the work with you, imagine the network effect of that expanded capacity and what's possible through that. If you've got 10,000 men, women, however, whatever you identify as, right, with that spaciousness, what's possible through that, rather than this locked in, tiny, sort of almost crunched ball version of our spaciousness versus absolute spaciousness. So I just love the work. That's why it's so important to me. And I just wanted to name that for people, because I work with people that are scared to talk about what's going on in the world, because they're so terrified that even if I say a word within a business structure, back to the story, if I speak up, then I might lose my job. And if I lose my job, I lose my house and my kids can't get food on the table. So there's so many layers to this. But the root cause is, like as you say, is these, maybe you can talk a bit about these negative identities and what that actually means. for people. Because one of mine, just to bring this to life for the listener or watcher, remember the colleague when you had to help clear a negative identity I had with a work colleague, right? That work colleague wasn't doing anything to me, but the stories and the narratives and the frustration I had around that particular colleague. But it took me, how long? It probably took 10 minutes of you and your process to actually get that cleared within me. But I've not actually had that issue since. And that guy, by the way, I just hugged him last Tuesday as he went off to the Middle East for a business assignment. The same guy that 3 months ago I was telling you is literally the bane of my life.
Yeah, amazing.
So yeah, I just wanted to throw that back to you as a sort of
a
prompt, really.
Yeah, it's lovely to have that update, because I think we'd connected fairly soon after that session, but lovely to hear that 3 months later thing, because this is the thing, the work is permanent. Whatever we delete out the system, it's gone. It doesn't come back, because we deal with it at such a root cause level. So yes, gosh, so much I could say to that. I hear the question around negative identities. I just want to wave a little flag for your favourite Buckminster Fuller quote about, I'm going to paraphrase it, but old paradigms don't have to die for new ones to be birthed. It's that thing of, and really for me, my passion and what I see in you now is creating new rather than battling the old. It's like, yes, I see the old and I want better. I want different. I want more expansiveness. I want a better world, a better future. So where are the channels where we can create that effortlessly and easily now? And some of that might be still in connection with the old world, but actually new ones can be born without us having to actively do anything with the old. And ultimately then the new amplifies, the more attention's given to that, and the old can just quietly disappear. And that happens on an individual level. With this work, it happens on an individual level, and it then filters into the macro as well. And that's where I love the combination of the two of us, because my interest is in the individual. My interest is getting every individual back in that feeling of who they really are, back in that aliveness, back in that energy and capability. And I love that you've got that macro systemic lens, that looking at the whole picture, the whole world. It's very cool, because both, as you said before about masculine and feminine, both, all of this is important. All of this is valuable. So negative identities. If we think about it starting out from positive identities, so I think everybody would understand if they've got a positive identity around their job, I'm a capable leader, or I'm a capable business development person, or I'm a capable entrepreneur. It's like there's a positive identity there. You've learned some stuff, you've achieved some stuff, you've gathered some experience, and you've got a positive identity. Because notice how you'll perhaps be one way in work, and then you'll be perhaps a different way with your loved one or loved ones. So you've got a different positive identity with the ones you love, where you perhaps are softer, perhaps more able to listen, given what you've just been saying about how it can be in work sometimes. You tend to kind of go, yes, I've got this under control in work. At home, you might be a little bit softer. You might be the one who, snuggles under a blanket with the TV and a bowl of popcorn. You've got a positive identity of a driver. So you've learnt the skills to drive a car, to make that just part of who you are. So the minute you get in the car, positive identity of driver, and you're off. So we move every single day. We move through all these different positive identities that we've actively chosen, that we've actively gone towards, that we've consciously learnt stuff for, to become that kind of person, including, a good partner, a good parent. We don't instantly know. Jesus, Lord knows we don't instantly know how to be a good parent. We're learning the whole time, and hopefully creating a positive identity around being a parent. Or grandparent, Garry, indeed.
I know.
But what also happened, so particularly when we were little, because we're these incredible beings in this, what the hell is this world of humans, with loud noises and these big people who seem to be in charge of whether we survive or not, are in charge of whether we survive or not. They provide our food, they provide our shelter, they provide our hugs. Then we go into school where, we've got a whole bunch of other weird people, and experiences that we've never had before, and scary things, and like you say, bullying. You know, God, kids can be really mean. And I was just thinking on the way home, it's historically thought about as girls are really mean to each other, but God, boys can be really horrible to each other. Most kids have had some experience of being bullied or being the bully.
Mm-hmm.
And neither is the truth of who we are. So all these circumstances when we were younger, which are at least upsetting, potentially traumatizing, and not necessarily in how we think of trauma. You know, we can easily think trauma means all the horrible stuff that we see on the news and all the severe experiences that exist. They do exist, and they are horrendous, and they are definitely trauma. And trauma can be, I saw Stephen Bartlett calling it little t trauma. Trauma can be the seemingly smallest moments in a child's life, but which cause a reaction in that moment, cause a trauma response in that moment, because in that moment, it felt life-threatening.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, we unknowingly create negative identities for ourselves. So it's not conscious. We don't choose it. It's an instantaneous survival reaction. So let's say a parent is telling you off, even if you're a little baby. I know I was quite horrendous to my kids when, especially my firstborn, when he was a little baby, because I was not a caring, compassionate mother. I was a stressed, frantic mother. And I was harsh with him, like, poor little kid. I had such ridiculously high expectations of a small baby. I would touch and I would roll my eyes and I would like, oh, for God's sake, at this poor child who's just being a baby, like just pooping or needing some food. It's like, it's what babies do. But I didn't have the compassion for that. I didn't have the open heart for that. I was too stressed. I was too myopic. I was too much in that unhealthy masculine energy. So anyway, situations like that are exactly the kind of moment when your parents can have traumatized you. And in that moment of upset, when that parent shouted at you or told you off or upset you in some way, you first of all resisted a feeling that you didn't like. So it probably felt, you'd have probably felt hurt or scared, or what else might be a word? I can't think of another word right now. You might feel like a disappointment. Any feeling that could have come up in that moment, you resist because it doesn't feel good. And you're in a survival moment, so you think, blooming heck, I can't feel that. And in that moment, you also then make a decision to try and solve that problem, because we are amazing problem solvers. That's our natural state. Here's a problem, great, how do I solve it? So in that moment, that felt like a real, genuine, life-threatening problem to solve. We resisted the feeling and we made a decision about ourselves. We didn't know we did any of this. It was all unconscious, but we made some decision about ourselves. So for example, one of mine was I am wrong. I've also had I am a failure. And both of those together, what a surprise that I spent my life striving and efforting and trying to prove myself to be good enough, because I was unconsciously desperate to disprove that I am wrong and I am a failure. And that's exactly what these negative identities do. So given we unknowingly created them, we buried them away in our psyche because they were so horrible, and we tried to pretend they weren't there. But they never really went. They've just sat there under the rug the whole time of our life. And so through our life, we then layered on strategies and activities to try and compensate for that negative identity, to try and cover over that deep feeling of wrongness that we felt quietly all our lives, for so long, in fact, that we don't even know there's anything other that we can feel. It's become so much a part of our experience. We've mistakenly thought that's who we are. But it's really not. It is one of these identities, these negative identities that we unknowingly created as a child during these moments of upset. And then, as I say, then we built on all these strategies and all these ways and all these ways of trying to be in life, to try and prove that I am good, I am capable, I am enough. But all the while with this little voice in the background going, but oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. What if I'm not? What if I'm not? What if somebody does find out that I am actually wrong? Like, not just I got something wrong. What if they discover I am actually wrong as a person? Mm-hmm. And in my experience, every single human being on the planet is walking around with this shit in their system. It does not belong there. It is not who you are. And until I came across this work, nobody and nothing had ever got to that root of that was driving my behavior. And only now am I able to truly embody the truth that I am a good person. I am doing my best. It doesn't mean I'm perfect. This work doesn't make you some perfect, weird human being who nails it all every single time. It actually makes you a human being. It brings you back into actually being human and being in the flow of life and trying stuff and getting it wrong and learning from that and trying again. And as you said, Garry, bringing others into that experience and collaborating, and then everything opens up again.
Everyone's going to get bored of me saying my head's buzzing like crazy when I have my guests on, but it's just the truth, Helen, because I felt freedom. As you just explained that, particularly those last few sentences, and I know it for myself, although I have my ups and downs, hell, I had it even last week, I've had my ups and downs, but the ability to self-regulate and remember that spaciousness is so much easier and quicker after going through this experience with you of the Mace Method. And I've had coaching myself, as you know. I've had lots of coaching, and again, different modalities work for different outcomes, right? It was great to have a coach to help me get to the point I wanted to get to. But if you're looking for root cause change within your psyche from the inside out, I haven't found anything either, honestly, in my life that works as cleanly, as quickly, and without the need to re-traumatize yourself as what you're doing with the Mace Method. And I'm saying that with absolute sincerity to anybody listening, because the reason I'm so keen to get you on is because, you know, I love you anyway as a human being, but the world needs, like, this isn't, I really say this, like, when we're talking about healthy masculinity here, right? I'm surrounded by, in workplaces, in the world, by men who are terrified because they don't know something like this exists for them. And we're seeing what's even worse, terrifyingly, is we're now seeing, I'm not with these young people. I've got to speak to my son about this. But like this whole incel culture, this red pill culture, like there's some very, very, very unsavory, scary things happening for the next generation of young men. Really scary things, like systemically. And this is a critical antidote to that, is knowing that these men can have a space based on connection and listening and understanding and love. They can still drive, they can still want to become the man and build a business and build people, but from a place of connectedness and love and humanity, not through fear and the need to dominate and control. And that's why I see the work, honestly, Helen, what you're doing, and thank you for it, is so critically important. And again, we're weaving between the sort of macro and the sort of personal, but it's really important. Like, we're at a really critical moment in our evolution, even, I would say, within businesses and outside, that if we don't adopt something like this, right, I'm concerned, honestly, around the reinforcement of those, almost like it feels like a kind of bit of a crazy thing to say. It's almost like a nuclear bomb of negative identity that's happening. Like there's just this weird coming together of fear and domination at the moment, which just doesn't need to be that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So again, so much I can say, Garry. I want to hook right back to the very start of that, where you're saying you also haven't found anything that works as effectively as this, and you were speaking there about that self-regulation piece getting so much easier.
Yes.
And this is the thing, it's like these negative identities act like an anchor, and so that's why I have such a passion for more people accessing this work first. So historically, it's been around for like 25 years. Historically, it's been used for people or by people in traditional mental health situations. You know, they're in the depths of anxiety, depression, PTSD, OCD, all that kind of stuff, addictions. And it's been much more in the therapeutic space, oh my God, I've got a real mental health problem, please help me. And it's absolutely available for that. But what I'm really passionate about is people now accessing this proactively in a, come to this first, please come to this first, because it could save you a hell of a lot of time and money. As I've said a number of times, I've spent 10 years and 70 grand trying to deal with this stuff in me. And I don't regret that, because that's all been perfect. I have an amazing understanding of the full landscape of the kind of stuff that's available on the market. But with that understanding, I now see, come to this first. Because otherwise, every time you go on a retreat, every time you do some breath work, every time you do an ice bath, every time you read a self-help book, every time you work with a coach, every single time your negative identities are going to suck you back into their story. They're going to suck you back into the same old damn narrative and the same old damn patterns. So if you're trying to break procrastination, if you're trying to stop living a chaotic life, if you're trying to be more open and more healthy, masculine, and more of a listener, like you had with Colin talking about, unless you deal with these negative identities, they are going to keep anchoring you back, because as far as your system is concerned, they are your survival. Now, they're not. They are your downfall, absolutely 100%. But until we realize that, until we actually deal with them, your nervous system thinks they are a survival mechanism, because they were in the moment of their creation.
Mm-hmm.
So until you've got rid of them, your nervous system keeps saying, no, 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 you can't do that thing. Remember, you're a failure. No, 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 no. Remember, you can't do that thing because you are wrong. You don't deserve that. Self-sabotage, that is literally negative identities sucking you back into their story, trying to keep you small and limited and fearful, because your negative identities think it's dangerous to be all of who you can be.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. That's, I get another reaction on that one, Helen, because just the invitation is so clear and clean and crisp, isn't it? And I think that's also what's beautiful I've witnessed in you and your work over the years as well, right? It's just that clarity that you now have, and you've got the evidence, right? As we start to wrap up, can you please, obviously I've been sharing the website wildfigsolutions.co.uk, but you've got a load of testimonials, right, where, including one you did with me and a lot of other people. Where can people find those, so that if they want to go and research a bit more?
Yeah, for sure. So they're on YouTube. Perhaps if I drop you the link to my Mace Energy Method playlist, Gary, and we can put that on the show notes. Yes, so I've got videos on there about the process, videos about the kind of experiences you might be having that it can help with. But frankly, it's any problem that you want to change. Yes, I've got conversations with you, with Frank, Juliet, Jackie. So yes, some great examples there of people who've had amazing results with this. So I'll drop those links over so that we can get those shared. No,
brilliant. And also, when if you can just share, if you will, with in confidence. But when this is called In the Business of Healthy Masculinity, we've done a lot around healthy masculinity. We've done a little bit about business. Can you just give us a bit of flavour before we head off today around the sort of clients that you work with that do work in the business space? Maybe they own a business, maybe they're a leader within a business, and maybe just a couple of examples of where they were and where they are after the process, just to give a bit of colour and flavour as we disappear today.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Gary. And you've summed it up beautifully there in terms of that's the two core people I work with. They're either entrepreneurs in their own right, leading businesses, creating businesses, and doing great things in the world in that respect, or they are leaders within organizations, so within the corporate space. And the challenges can be quite different. The source is obviously the same, but from an entrepreneurial perspective, for example, I had a client who he already knew he had something in him that was saying, I'm not worthy. Now, I just want to really fly the flag and say, you do not need to have any kind of insight into your psyche. You don't need to have any understanding of your deeper fears or beliefs. All you need to know is there's something you don't like and you want it to change. Now, this client did actually know he had this belief of I am not worthy. And he thought it was just a belief, as I did with some of mine. As I said before, they're not just beliefs, they are actually whole identities we've created for ourselves. So he had grown businesses, scaled businesses, he'd bought and sold, and he'd done so much, but he got to the point where he's like, literally, how again am I having this I am not worthy reaction again as I'm about to make the next move in my business again and go to the next level again? Why again am I having this I am not worthy? And he actually said, and I loved this insight when he came to his first session, he was like, I've realized that I did think in my younger years that this drove me. I thought that this belief was like my fuel, that I needed this belief to push me forward and to make me achieve, which I know is a very common misunderstanding. And he'd got to the point where he's gone, I've seen it now. I know for a fact it's not helping me. I know it's holding me back. And so he was ready to be free from that. And absolutely, that's what happened. So by the end of his foundations, so just to say that's where everybody starts with their foundations. For some people, that's all they need. For others, they do more. He had his foundations. He was like, back in grounded clarity, back feeling like the leader that he is, back feeling clarity of purpose and desire and direction of travel, rather than this trapped, again, that feeling is so common, stuck, limited, can't do. He was back into ownership. It's one of the sort of ways of describing this work. We go from inflowing to outflowing. So he'd gone from that inflowing, squirreling around on the inside, oh my God, I'm not worthy, how do I do this? No. Back into outflowing, capable, grounded leader, leading change in the world. But yes, also people who are in organizations, and often their experience is of overwhelm. There's so much volume, so much fear going on in organizations. It's, to me, the vast majority of people in corporates are living in the feeling of these negative identities, covered over with capable identities, which is like I was when I was in corporate. I was still living with those negative ones, but I was so masked up with, no, I'm capable, I've got it, I've done this and I've done that, and look at me, I've totally got it all under control. But then at some point the cracks will show, because when it is a facade, when it is a mask, the cracks will open up, and the longer you leave it, the bigger the cracks get, the worse the downfall is. Again, why I advocate for proactive on this, not waiting till everything goes to shit. So I mean, you're welcome to. Some people will, and that's just how it goes. You know, I'm not sure we're entirely in control of when we choose to take action, but my preference is that you come to this sooner rather than later. So people who are in that space, back-to-back meetings, constant stuff to do, and people throwing things at you, and I need this turned around in 30 minutes, and it's just relentless. But cycling all the way back to what we said at the very start, it's not really about what you're doing, it's how you're feeling. And so when these people have then, these leaders have then deleted out these negative identities, they're back feeling in charge of their life. They find they're putting in boundaries in a helpful and healthy way. They are making requests. They are saying, thanks for that request. You know, so I'm also doing this, and this. So let me see how I can juggle those things together, and I'll come back to you if this is going to be a problem. So there's so much clearer communication, so much more slowed down to actually be conscious and choose what's next. How does that fit? What's the more efficient way? What's the simpler way? Because absent of all the clutter, we get so much more efficient, so much more capable, we're not in threat state. We get so much smarter. Things look so much more obvious and easy. And so that's the kind of experience that people from the corporate space are getting, that it's still the same volume of work, but I don't feel frantic. I don't feel under pressure. I don't feel reactive to that person, like you just said with your example, that person that's been pissing me off so many times. I'm not reacting to them, because we shift people from reaction into response with this work. And so that goes for everything in life.
What a beautiful way to wrap up today, Helen. A joy to see you. I hope that listeners, viewers got a lot of value out of this. A reminder, wildfigsolutions1word.co.uk. There'll be lots of links to the testimonials in the show notes. There'll be other links to myself as well. Again, you can find out about myself and the Radicality ecosystem at radicality.co.uk. And until next time, and I'm sure there will be, Helen, take care. I'm looking forward to this going out. I'm going to be publishing this on the 20th of October as we are recording a couple of weeks before. And I can't wait for the world to get hold of this, because what you're offering is critically important. I've found the value of it. And thank you for being and doing who you are, my friend.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Gary. And I really appreciate you keeping an eye on the time, because as you could probably tell, I could have talked about this for hours.
And because we know each other so well, it's easy for us just to go, that's our boundary for today, and on with life we go.
100%.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone, for watching.